Hello, welcome to Insights, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odiko.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you for joining us.
This episode will throw up issues around transparency and accountability in government and how the federal government, vis-a-vis the Tinubu administration, hopes to foster public participation in governance by boosting the ability and capacity of citizens to track the progress of government ministries, departments, and agencies. We'll also appraise how the press operates in the midst of competing interests and setting statutory limitations to press freedom, even within a democracy. Elizabeth is here and she's ready with the concluding part of the conversation she had last time on digital literacy in Nigeria. Elizabeth?
Yes, of course, we'll conclude our conversation on digital literacy. And we hear the government is doing so much to increase the number of persons that are literate in this area. So we'll conclude by learning more from our guest.
Very well then, let's kickstart the conversation.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of agreements in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is
You know, it is a universal declaration of human rights that everyone has the right to freedom of expression, including freedom to hold opinions without interference, and also to seek, receive, and impact information and ideas through any media, regardless of frontiers. I believe that is the derivative or a derivative of press freedom. And though that guarantee is given by the government to the media or the press for its citizens, there are still issues of constitutional statutory protections pertaining to media freedom in many countries, even in the democratic ones. For instance, what happens when there is a conflict amongst public interest, free media, and some competing interests? Well, we'll get to hear from the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Abuja Inquirer newspaper, of course, Dan Apowa, who joins us now on Insight. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. It's actually great to bring you on. This is your first time on Insight, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, correct. Fantastic. Good to have you here. I reckon we should begin more generically and not double down in the first instance on, you know, the situation of press freedom in Nigeria as it is, since Nigeria is a constituent of the larger world that is currently believed to be experiencing a downward spiral in terms of press freedom. And that is not coming from me. That is coming from the Freedom House's freedom in data that they unveil every year. They call it the Freedom in the World data. So some of the key findings from the data, especially the ones I went through in the last 10 years, are concerning. Yet it says that there is hope that press freedom can rebound if given and when given the opportunity. Do you agree with that assertion, especially when or since it professes that, you know, the basic desire for democratic liberties, even including the access to honest and fact-based journalism, can never be extinguished? Not in Nigeria, not in any part of the world. Is that true? Is that false, or are you somewhere in between?
Thank you very much for that question. I think that press freedom should be an integral part of the society, because freedom of the press helps the society to grow. And any country that tries to impede press freedom is not likely to go far, because you attract the wrong attention to your country. There'll be a lot of negatives that come with that. And as a country, you don't want to risk that. As a country, you don't want to risk that. So I think that press freedom should be, journalists should be free.
Okay.
The papers should be free to publish what they want. And if you're dissatisfied, go to court.
Without limitations. Isn't that why we're where we are right now, without some form of limitation? But even before I take you up on that, I mean, you've opened up, you've opened up a Vesta now, and I intend to pursue that in the course of our conversation. But I'd like to take you back again and make sure that you're being decisive on this issue. Do you think and do you agree that, well, like I referenced the Freedom House and their data on the spiraling, press freedom globally, but do you think that in spite of all that is happening, the press, free press, can never be extinguished the world over?
Well, free press can never be extinguished the world over, because anything that happens in one part of the country, if there's any repression of the press in any part of the world, it's reflected elsewhere. I give you a personal experience.
Okay.
In 2007, the Abuja Inquirer wrote a story about the friction between Obasanjo and Atiku and how he was heating up the system, and there were concerns that there might be a military coup. That Monday when we ran the story, a lot of SSS people came to the Abuja Inquirer, closed our office, took me to the SSS or DSS headquarters and detained me and my editor. Now, by the next day, it was all over the wire service, a lot of Committee to Protect Journalists in New York that I'm a member of. They put it on their front page. Other papers picked it up. My cousin read about it in some local publication in New York and got in touch. That's how fast things spread. Now, we're talking 2007. So if there is a repression on journalism or journalists, it goes very far. So you can't really do that. You can't really do that. So press freedom is so key to the development of any country.
True.
It's so key to the development of any country. And any repression can have very negative impression of the country, because even at that time, both the United Nations and the U.S. State Department documented my arrest then as one of Obasanjo's infractions on the press.
I hear you, and you talked about these imperatives for a free press and how it's important it is for the development of any society or community. But I would also like for us to look at the flip side of the conversation, because now we're inferring to when perhaps there's some form of repression from the other side. But, some reports we've also gotten, it would seem like, large segments of the population are no longer, are somewhat wary and are no longer receiving unbiased news and information. And that is not because journalists are being thrown in jail now, like you said, or not because they are facing some repressive moves. But, is it not, even here in Nigeria, and we're experiencing this, and the media is falling prey to more nuanced efforts that impede press freedom, succumbing perhaps to preferential treatment from the powers that be. Some segments even condemning those who are professionally doing their jobs and describing them as, no, these ones are not journalists. Some are even more interested in patronage at the expense of true and unbiased reporting. Some are even, some are engendering populist agenda without recourse to balance and fairness. Who is to blame in all of this? Isn't it the media that is putting itself in all of this wahala?
Okay, well, I understand where you're coming from. But you see, like all over the world, there are lobbyists. Governments engage lobbyists to do things for them. Even they engage PR consultants, media advisors to do things for them. You might call them spin doctors. But these are people who will bombard you with one side of the story and allow you go to town with it without bothering to get the other side. And, sometimes a lot of journalists are being used without them even knowing it, because the other side will put pressure on you, relentless pressure on you, and not want you to look at the other side. And you'll find that today, a lot of media outlets sometimes use one-sided story, and inside you will see, oh, we tried to reach the opposite side and we couldn't get a reaction from them, so we had to come up with this. In the past, you couldn't do that. In the past, you couldn't do that. And again, you sometimes see that sometimes these kind of reports are influenced, you know, for whatever reasons. They are probably influenced by people talking to them or for whatever reason. But I think that we have to deliver the news in an unbiased form. You must get both sides. And I remember when I was 21, 22, I had my internship with Newswatch magazine. So Delegiwa was the editor-in-chief at the time. So he had sent me to Benin to go and cover a story of Alele Williams being the vice chancellor, having this problem with Sagi, who had been removed as dean of the Faculty of Law and replaced with Doris Afejuku, his student. So he asked me if I could. I was a rookie. I went, they bought flight ticket for me. I went to Benin, I got there. I was hijacked, for want of a better word. Professor Ishesage, Festus, Iyayi, Jackson Omene, they just cornered me, small boy that I was. They told me their own side of the story. I tried to talk to Alele Williams. She wouldn't even see me. I went to Doris Afejuku, who was the dean, and Professor Sage's student. She said, oh, I'm very qualified to do this. But again, all three of them were Shekiris. Alele Williams, Shekiri. Ishesage, Shekiri. Doris Afejuku, Shekiri. So I got back to, I thought I had a good story because I had spoken to Ishesage, Jackson Omene, and Festus Iyayi, who was the local chairman of ASU. I got back, so when I went back, Delegiwa said, oh, fantastic, what did you do? I said, I went to the university, I saw Omene, I saw Festus Iyayi, I saw Ishesage. Good, did you do interviews with them? I said, yes. So he said, okay, that's good. So did you get a balance from the university? Did you talk to Alele Williams? I said, she won't see me. Did you talk to Doris Afejuku? Oh, I entered her office, she walked me out. Did you talk to the PRO of the University of Benin? I said, no, but I believe I have a complete story. So I came back to Lagos. He said, no, we can't publish such one-sided story. And he put it down to my inexperience, and I agree. Then they were to send somebody else to Benin to get that other side of the story to create that balance. For me, I learned a major lesson from that. But today's journalists are in a hurry, especially if people at the top selectively leak their own side of the story to you and do everything they can to make sure that you don't get the other side of the story. And you get excited. You want exclusive. You go to town with it. But you see, readers don't look at that. When some readers don't look at that. Once they see the story, they say, wow, we have an exclusive. We have a scoop. But it's a one-sided story. So even with us at the Abuja Inquirer, I insist that we have both sides of the story. I mean, and as much as possible, we try to do that.
It shouldn't just be the Abuja Inquirer doing that. I mean, it should be all of us. The entire Nigerian press, you know, striving for excellence, striving for professionalism in the discharge of our duty.
But it will be tough to strive for excellence because in this era of social media and breaking news from...
I understand that the competition can be stiff.
Yes, competition can be stiff because nowadays you have to really do much to get your story out there because with this era of social media and breaking news, everybody's a journalist. But some of that, they don't even verify. They just said, by the time you are coming out with the appropriate story, the following day in the print media, it's already out there. Some people don't even want to read it to get the details. They've just made up their minds with the one-sided one that they have read. You know, it's unfair, but it'll be tough to correct it because news gets to people faster through their phones.
Let me move you on to the issue of media and democracy and how intrinsically they are linked. You know, there's absolutely no doubt that, you know, there's this linkage between the media and democracy. I mean, and seeing this close relationship between media freedom and political change, I like your thoughts on what you think. I mean, you know, this whole attitude of political leadership to constructive, you know, analysis, or maybe I'm being kind there, constructive criticism from the press, you know, and how important it is for government to measure its response, you know, just so we can consolidate our democracy. But I know, and I'm sure you also know, that even the best democracies are impacted by issues of press freedom even today. So in terms of growing or consolidating our democracy, on the first part, what should be the role of today's media? And on the other hand, how should government perceive and is the word tolerate the role of the media, you know, in a democracy?
You see, ideally, the media should be unbiased. As much as it tries to be, but it's not always so. And the government sometimes can be intolerant of the free press. But you can say that today in Nigeria, with this present administration, there's been somewhat tolerance, because a lot of the things that I see in the conventional media, you know, in the past, if it was the military.
Are you saying this historically, from the historical perspective now, as in coming from where we are probably coming from in the past to where we are right now? Is that why you're saying you're giving them perhaps a thumbs up?
Yes, because this current government, sometimes they are somewhat tolerant. Maybe because in part, maybe because the Minister of
Information,
a good friend of mine who was a member of Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, he was our secretary. And he's an important go-between, you know. So, and he's reaching out to us more and ensuring that he says you can constructively criticize. Nobody will harass you. We will respond with facts if we have to.
True. And
things will be done properly. You know, he's told us to us several times, and he reaches out well, and he's helping as a good go-between between this government and the media owners. But having said that, some people can be very intolerant, especially if they think the media is too critical. But there's no way the media will not be critical. Historically, the media has been very critical. It's like holding the mirror on behalf of the people.
But how critical? Because, you know, especially talking within the context of competing interest. And I'll give you an example. What do you think is the public's right to know in a situation? Let's just create a scenario now, hypothetically, of perhaps something just happened in Abuja now, and you got an exclusive, and there are competing issues. First, there is, of course, the right to know, the public's right to know. But then what happens when that public's right to know conflicts or clashes against, say, national security, for instance? What and how then should the media respond to a situation like that?
No, the media should have unfettered access to information, you know, which is why I commend the Freedom of Information Act.
Yes.
You know, because sometimes government can be shielding information because they think it will impact on national security and all of that. But the government should be able to take the media into confidence, knowing that they would not report anything that would jeopardize national security. But I can't vouch for social media, because anything they get, they just put out there. You know, because even those who are against the government or against the people's will might put out disinformation there and let it go viral. The more salacious it is, the better for them. But having said that, I think that there should be honesty in the disinformation of information, especially from the rulers to the ruled. There should be honesty. And once there is honesty, trust comes into play, and with that way, the government and the media can work hand in hand, and there'll be transparency, especially if they explain themselves very well.
On that note, I'd like to thank you so much, Publisher and Editor-in-Chief, the Abuja Inquirer newspaper, Dan Akpowa. Thank you so much for coming on our program. And of course, it will be good to see you return to Insights another time when we have yet another interesting conversation.
Please, by all means, I am available because NTA is a station that I like particularly. I grew up with NTA, but that was before they became this big. So.
And we're getting bigger. Thank you so much for coming on our program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Elizabeth Omori is up next.